Hey
I
Tracy, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Okay, let me.
Am I getting you from Denmark or Los Angeles?
Los Angeles. I'm supposed to be in Denmark. God damn it.
I love Denmark. It's amazing that you get to live there a lot of the year. I would
Yeah.
imagine the first time you were there was like mid to late 80s.
Oh man, yeah. It was I didn't get to Denmark till like 93, 92, 93 cuz LA Guns we didn't tour till late. We didn't tour till like our third record in Europe.
Wow, that always blows my mind when you find out which bands were huge in which territories and unknown. Like I
Yeah.
found out my friend Tim, who's a big musician in Denmark, he loves Cheap Trick, and whenever he wants to see Cheap Trick live, he has to fly to England because Cheap Trick is
Yeah.
unknown in Denmark.
Yeah, when we were doing our Cheap Trick record, exploration there, it was so hard to find the original pressings of Cheap Trick in Denmark. We got them, but it was not easy, and
You
they
would
have so many record shops there still, but Cheap Trick's hard to find there.
They still have a Blockbuster last time I was there.
The Blockbuster building is still there, but it's not Blockbuster now.
Oh, got it. It's also funny to me that Cheap Trick was not big in Denmark, given that like three of the members have Danish last names. You'd think they'd want to embrace their
Right?
own.
Right. I don't know if it's that they're not big there. I think that they just never went there, and that has a lot to do with flooding the supply chain with albums and things like that. Because I know back in the day, anyways, that when we would go to any town anywhere, that territory would be flooded with product. The label would be like, they're going there, send 100 records there and stuff like that. So if you never go somewhere, then the labels don't put the products there. It's crazy.
But fortunately, Japan was one of the countries you did catch on in
Yeah,
on. England, so you got a lot of the big territories
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, definitely.
maintain them. So Sunbomb, latest project I'm aware from you. When
Yeah.
was it actually recorded? That part I couldn't figure out.
I recorded all the music like second half of 2018, beginning of 2019.
Wow.
Um, got handed in to Michael like mid 2019, and he finished mid 2020.
Wow. Because it sounds fresh. It's not like it's a dated thing where you go, man, that sounds like 1997.
Right.
You can't do that. It's heavier than we've gotten from you on the past few records, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out when it was made, but then you did the music, you gave it to Michael, he added the vocals and the lyrics, or did you give him any sketches?
Nothing. I don't write lyrics at all.
Really?
So no, no. So with me, it's always, like taking a chance. It's like I just wrote all this stuff, and it's up to the singer or lyricist or whatever to either destroy it or make it great. And by the way, the album is number one on Amazon Hard Rock chart today.
Well
That's what I woke.
deserved.
That's what I woke up to today. I was like woohoo, But that's how
Number
that.
one's always great.
Yeah, it's lonely at number one, and I don't mind being lonely.
There you go. But given that it's number one now, but the roots of it go back to 2018,
Right.
were there leftover songs and that you were already thinking, well, this is old. There's going to be some bomb too.
No, I mean it's such a weird thing, Sunbomb. And I was just talking to my wife about it. So, Frontiers, hey, do you want to do like a solo record? And I'm like, cha-ching, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like no idea on earth what I was gonna do, when they asked. And of course I said yes, but it was never gonna be like, an instrumental record or something, that boring. So my wife and I were doing these Sunday heavy metal drives every Sunday. We would drive up the coast here before we went back to Denmark, and we would listen to metal on Spotify. Like every anything we could think of. We would just like spend a couple hours on Sundays and do that. So it was really, really like you know full of metal at that time, and so I would just sit down on the floor in our living room with my laptop, and I would write stuff, to see what was coming out. And I had like 3 or 4 of these songs that were all sounding kind of focused, and I just texted Michael one of them. I said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Kind of thing. Didn't tell him anything, and he writes me back like 10 minutes. What's this? I go, "It's me. Do you want to sing on it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I want to sing on it." I'm like, "Okay, awesome. Would you sing on 10 more of these?" And he's like, "Oh, so you're making an album?" I'm like, yeah. That's kind of the whole idea here. And he's like, "I'm in." Like fantastic. Because I had just met Michael like a year earlier. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't really like an old friend. He was a new friend. And I had seen him perform in LA at the Whiskey earlier that year, and it blew me away, man. Like what a voice. And so he was like, when I wrote all that music, it was very stressful because I'm like, who's gonna sing this? You know what I mean? It had to be Michael. You know what I mean? It's like the only way that it could fully realize the vision of what that music is. I mean, if it's in the vein of Scorpions and Ozzy and Dio and Deep Purple, well, Michael, I think, is the only guy that can really do it.
Yeah,
And
he could pull off Boston, so what can he pull off?
right. That's the deal, and when I knew, and I remember when he was in Boston, I was so impressed. I'm like, who is this guy? I mean, like, who goes and sings for Boston? And anyways, so as soon as I started getting these finished tracks back, I never heard like a rough idea or anything. I didn't get anything until they were done being recorded. And it was like
Wow.
one song after another over a period of about 10 days. And every day was like Christmas for me. It was just like, whoa, wow. Hey, come here, my wife, listen to this. And she's just like, wow. She's Danish, so there's no bullshit. She says like, wow, they're so good, and I was like, all right, okay. So it was successful, 8 months ago when it got turned in. I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, it's a
And
funny
today it's the '1 album. It's just like, what the fuck?
hey, you can now fudge the statistics and you can be like, he's had number ones in the 80s, the 90s, 010s. Like, we'll find stuff like Estonia, something charted,
Right,
2011.
right. Well, I mean, to be fair, the last 2 LA Guns records entered new releases at #1 too on Amazon. So I don't know, man. This fucking business? Who the fuck knows? Got
Not
good
I.
fans, right? Got good fans. That's it.
Well, it's so interesting, the combination of you and Michael, because if you didn't know much about hard rock, you'd be like, yeah, those two guys, they toured together. Like, no, they didn't.
Oh,
But the Tracii Guns caricature that you would draw is this dark guy, vampires, gothic, and then the
Satan.
caricature that you would draw of like Michael is, hey, Christian band, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But you both like the same records. Having interviewed
Yeah.
Michael, you both know everything about Van Halen. You're both Boston fans. You're Cheap Trick fans, etc. It's interesting how you're branded so off.
Right. I mean, and that was, my cynical way of thinking, being Satan and all. It's like, hey, I'm going to go get Moses, and then the running joke from the beginning of this band is that the band should be called Guns and Moses.
Yes.
Um, so there's got to be humor in music. I don't care how dark and depressing and sad the music is. There's got to be humor involved, and that's the balance. That's like comedians. I'm like really drawn to being friends with comedians because they're the most depressed people I know. It's just this weird thing, and I'm totally paying attention to you. But because my wife's in Denmark, they're 9 hours ahead, and
Yeah.
when she talks, wait, let's see. If it's not true, it's called lying. So you were bragging because it's truly hold on. Let me tell her I love her.
Yeah, I think you're doing things right. You know the balance right there. If you don't respond within a certain amount of time, there can
That's
be trouble.
well, I'm going to explain this very well in a second.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm here and she's in Denmark and I'm supposed to be there, but there was some. I applied for a work permit January 14th, and guaranteed 30-day response, right? Guaranteed, right on the website. We know there's a pandemic, and like we're like, okay, but they said it, So the deal is in Denmark, if you apply for any kind of citizenship or anything like that, you're supposed to stay in the country while you're waiting for the reply. It's called procedural stay. You're allowed to stay because you're going through some procedure. But then I noticed my passport was getting close, like, hey, my passport's going to expire and I'm never leaving Denmark. I have to go back. And this was after now it'd been 10 weeks. So that 4-week thing was a big joke, And I'm like, okay, I got to go. And I knew, all right, we had a feeling that if I left, it would reset what are called tourist days. You can stay for 90 days at a time within a 180-day period, meaning you can come and go. And as long as you're there for 90 days, you're cool. And so what happened was I left, still expected my work permit to come through, within a couple of weeks after I left. And I get here, I get my passport. I'm like, yes, okay, I'm good to go for another 10 years. And we get a letter from them saying, okay, we need more detail. I'm like, God damn it. So I have to fill out this other stuff, more detail on the job, turn it in. That was April 14th. And now it's like, I can't go back until June 7th unless I get my work permit. So back to the texting. So she's with the baby and she has a full-time job, right? So if I text, it could be 2 hours before, I get a response. But if she texts and I don't respond, now, within 15 minutes is like, what are you doing? Kind of a thing, which I totally love because that means, she gives a shit about me. And at the end, that's all I really give a fuck about.
Yeah. I think you're one of those people who wound up where they needed to be.
Yeah.
I mean that with a compliment, that there were so many what ifs and close things. And now you look at where you're at and you go, well, #1 album, of course, but there's this niche audience that loves every single thing you do. And it doesn't matter if there's a hit or whatever.
Yeah.
The dude still makes a living. They still buy the merchandise and all that. So one of the things I'm curious about is when you realize that you were going to be okay on that end and you no longer needed to exist in the traditional music industry.
Right. That is such an interesting perspective, and it's really true, and nobody ever brings that up. When rock stars are built on personalities, okay? Being talented helps, but if you're interesting human to enough humans, then you can elevate and make a career out of it. That was never the intention. The intention was always to be a great musician, and hopefully that carries you through. But we all know that, Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, Jimmy Page, all these guys are awesome, but they're really awesome when they have David Lee Roth and Robert Plant and Ozzy Osbourne, right?
Yeah.
So being just a great guitar player and being interesting isn't enough. It's enough to do certain things, but it's not enough to really have fun and write songs and do all this kind of stuff. So the time when I had done Brides of Destruction, which was 2002, Nikki had told me, he goes, you're valuable. And I never ever put myself in those terms or anybody in those terms. Like, every artist, every actor, every cartoonist has a value. They have something and a monetary thing. And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, when you're in LA Guns, you make a certain amount of money, right? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, but on your own, you could probably make more money, if you put a monetary. And I'm like, well, how the fuck do you figure that? Well, because it's just you, isn't it? It's not paying four other guys and the light guy and the sound guy and a
Yeah.
manager and blah 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 blah. So he goes, you got to figure out your value. What is your value? What do you know bring in? You know, as an individual at this point in your life. And I'm like, I got no idea. And he said, well, it's definitely a lot, and it's a lot more than you're selling yourself short in this situation. Nikki's a snot, so it's like every conversation like that I had to kind of take with a grain of salt because his value was astronomical based on his personality, based on his bitchin' hair, based on his attitude, based on the right publicist, based on
Yes.
this, based on that. So after Brides, I was like, now what? Because with the LA gun situation and what had happened, which we don't need to go into.
Of course. I was full disclosure. This is here to make the emphasis on you and talk about the greatness that you are. There's no questions except when I ask later if you were bar mitzvah, but that's a different story for different.
Right. And we'll get into that. So, I couldn't go back with those guys then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what is it I do? I could give lessons, which is what I do now. That's my current job. Or I could learn how to engineer, and I could finally make records that I think should sound a certain way with this, that, and the other thing. And I became best friends with this guy named Greg Worth, who was Steve Vai's and still is Steve Vai's head engineer, mixer, because Steve Vai's house is 100 feet from here at the time when I first came back up here. And became friends with this guy. I was on Steve's label for a couple records and shit like that. He started teaching me how to record and how to, like get the sounds that my ears wanted to hear. Like, John Bonham's kick drum. I have to know how to do that. Why are Jimmy Page's guitars here, but they sound far away and mystical, magical, dragon-like, like all these kind of things. So, there's processes. And when I was younger, I was really lucky enough to hang out for short periods of time with Andy Johns and Eddie Kramer and George Drakolius and Rick Rubin. And these guys all had this simplicity in common in the way that you take a picture of audio. And the idea is that if something sounds good, just put a microphone in front of it, because if something sounds good already, it doesn't matter the quality of the recording, because something that's attractive is always attractive. If you have something that's not good and you put a microphone in front of it, you're going to amplify how crappy it is the flip side of that, right?
Yes.
So with Greg Worth, in my other house, I have this small room. It's like maybe 8 by 10 feet. And that was my studio. I had my drum set in there, my Pro Tools rig, 50 guitar amps, just like stacked to the wall and cabinet, just like, so my workspace was literally this tiny circle. And so I made these League of Gentlemen records with some of my old friends, which was really geared towards like late 60s, early 70s recording techniques and layering and stuff like that. Those records sounded great, and I was able to get that sound. I was able to reproduce what my ears wanted to hear. And at that time is when I was like, hey, I can do everything I need to do. I can write, I can record, I can release music, and I have a fan base, and I can just go out there. It's like throwing a fishing hook in the water. Let's see what happens. Yeah. And it took a while, by 2016, before the LA Guns reunion, I was starting to draw like 200, 300 people on my own with just my name and making bucks. I was like, like a motorhome with a tour manager and my manager and a guitar tech and 3 other guys, and we were just playing everywhere and anywhere and playing some LA Guns tunes, of course, but like a lot of other stuff and having a great time. And then this offer came to do this. Well, a little bit earlier, like 2015, Hard Rock Cafe in Las Vegas was doing like a 25th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And the promoter of that party reached out to me and Phil and said, "Hey, can we get both of you guys to do an LA Guns set?" And we both committed to it. We were both like, "Yeah, we'll do that. We'll totally do that." And we got into a rehearsal room with Scott Coogan, who's currently in LA Guns.
Great singer beyond the drumming.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he was in the Brides, so this is like not new territory. Cool, good. And Brett Muscat from Pastor Pussycat on guitar, and another guy was super cool playing bass. That was a friend of Brent's, I think. Anyways, we do this thing, and we're at rehearsal, and it was like, fuck, this sounds good. Like, because I perform LA Gun songs outside with other singers and stuff, and it's not like when Phil and I do it. It's different. It's just like, wow. So when we started rehearsing, my brain started spinning. It's like Jesus Christ, man, this sounds so good and so unique, and this, that, and the other. So we did the show, and we got a ridiculous amount of press out of that show. Like all the usuals, the blabbermouths and loud wires,
brave words, metal sludge,
etc. Yeah, you name it, and it was just a genuine feeling of excitement. Like these guys had 5 songs and they killed it, and nobody expected that, and Las Vegas and drunk people and titties and all this shit, right? So Phil and I had a chuckle about it. We were like, yeah, that was cool, like okay. And I'm still doing my shit. He's still doing the other LA Guns thing. And I go back out on tour. I'm like making bread, my family's doing good, not worried about anything, and just making records and just going. And then this hair metal festival here in LA calls my agent and they're like, "Hey, we want LA Guns, man. We want LA Guns," which was odd because the year before I had done that same festival and Phil's LA Guns played on the main stage. And, at 3 p.m. with, 120-degree sun laser beam on them, and they're wearing black leather. And I played there and headlined the second stage with Rudy Sarzo.
Oh, yeah.
That year.
Gunzo.
So the next year they want us to do it, and I just said, well, no, we're not going to play at 4 p.m. on the main stage. Fuck that. I don't play in the sun, period. I go, but we'll headline the second stage if you guys want us to do that. And Phil and my manager, they call, "What are you doing?" And I'm like going, "We want to be on that stage." I go, "And if it sucks, well, then we know. Then we know it sucks. But I got a theory. If we play there, everybody's going there to see it. Everybody's going to come from the pavilion, and they're going to come to that stage to see us play. Everybody's gritting their teeth, thinking I'm a total asshole. Just like, why would you sabotage yourself? Why would you do this?" It was the greatest decision I ever made in my life. They're putting the gear up, and the little park that we're playing in is like a quarter full. There's like 2,000 people there. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Then whoever was playing over there stopped playing, and people started coming over, and then it got half full. And I'm like, going, okay, that's better. That's kind of cool. And then I don't want to say who was playing on the other stage, but then the other act on the main stage started playing. Then our pavilion filled up, like packed, jam, 8,000 people. I look at Phil, I'm like, where are you? See, people are interested, And he goes, "Well, fuck you, man. I can't believe it. All right, let's give it a good one then, kind of a attitude, because we hadn't committed to anything yet. We were just, we went and rehearsed with the new band, but we weren't a band yet. We were doing one show. Well, we did that show and it made sense. Everybody got it. We got it. That was a success. It was a success enough to get more of that press and to get a bunch of record deal offers. And, at our age, it's like money. And I hope that doesn't come off as really.
No, it's a job. Why shouldn't you be compensated for doing work putting yourself out there, and it's a 24/7 job. I don't think people realize that. They see
It
you on
is.
stage for the 80 minutes and they like, gee, that's an easy gig. And you go, well, what about the travel? And I had to do all the interviews and the promotion, etc.
Everything. I mean, it never ends either. You know, it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
It's like do. So we get the offers, the record. Hey Phil, hate to bother you, but money. He's like, well, you write it, and blah blah blah. Can't be bothered. I'm like, all right. So I write the missing piece, that record, and I hand it into him, and I go, here you go. And it's kind of like, really highly evolved rock music on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes me back, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm so happy about this that like I have nothing to write about. And I'm like, well, don't worry, because I work with somebody else that writes. And this guy Mitch Davis, awesome guy. We have
Wrote for the original iPhone commercial, was it?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's super hyper ridiculous talented, in touch with the public. I got this. So Mitch writes everything, and then Phil gets with him, and they finish things, and they write, that record's done. And then Phil was like, well, I mean, I couldn't do this with the other guys now, could I? I'm like, I don't know, could you? I don't think so. So that was it. And things have just elevated from that point. To like you said, being in a place where I had to end up. I had to end up here. To really cap things off. And I doubt we're going to go much longer than 5 years from now. Phil is 64, and he wants to enjoy his life. I might be a little bit ahead of him. I'm 55, and it's like I got one kid in Denmark, one kid here, and I don't have a whole lot of time for touring anymore. So we'll give it a good go for 5 years, and the new record that's coming out in November is ridiculous as well. It's ridiculous.
Good, ridiculous.
We're on a good. Oh, did you get a copy yet?
I have not gotten a copy yet, but just making sure here. I don't know if you have an interview in a couple minutes, or I can get a couple more questions in. I didn't know what your timeline's like.
I do, but whatever. They always remember. They wait.
Okay, then I'll get 2 quick questions in, and then when the new record's out, I'll speak to you again in that. And the first one is: was Tracii Guns bar mitzvahed?
So I used to buy, my BMWs and Mercedes and like all these, rock star cars from this one place in the valley here, used. I don't buy shit new. I can't afford new shit. So I would always go and finance my fancy cars at this place that was run by, some good solid, they weren't Hasidic. They were just
Orthodox and
Orthodox Jewish guys, funny guys. So I'm in there and I'm buying I don't know what it was, 750, the big BMW, and it's like 2 PM, and it's a little shop. It's not like a big used car dealership or anything. And this kid comes in, one of their family. He was 19 years old, and he just got like certified as a rabbi, and the guy I always would deal with there goes, Tracii, you've been bar mitzvahed? And I think I was 42. I think I was 42. I go, no. He goes, you want to get bar mitzvahed? Right here in the office at the used car lot while you're buying. I'm like, sure. And I did it. I did it. And, my ex, I called her when it was done. She goes, did you get the car? And I go, yeah. I got something else too. And she goes, what? And I go, I got bar mitzvah. She's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I go, no, really, I did. So that, yes, I was bar mitzvah.
And then the last question, this comes from a big fan of yours named Grog Zeichner. Was the movie Sunset Society a lot of fun to film?
Yeah. I mean, and those things are. And I had done another one with Phoebe Dollar before that. I can't remember the name of it, with Lemmy and Ron Jeremy too. Those were, Phoebe, she's this real like vampira kind of like super sweet lady, who writes these, really B/C movie scripts and like has a lot of fun with it. And her dad is really good friends with Ron Jeremy, and that's how he gets involved, and Lemmy and all that stuff. And I was really good friends with Lemmy, and we would get like, hey, we're doing a movie, like, all right, I'm in, you know what I mean? And we would do them. And I mean, the whole time we would film 15 minutes at a time, kind of a thing, take one, take two. And then while they would set up the next scene, we would just talk for hours, on the sets of these movies. And they always took a couple months to do, and you'd go like every other day, and then you never got your lines ahead of time. I mean, it's like, well, maybe you could say this. It's like, okay, so kind of that whole thing. But those are things that are like almost personal, like the Sunset Society. And then those things come out, and I'm like, like why ruin the fun, But yeah, those things are great.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your time. Really looking forward to hearing that new LA Guns album. Just keep up all the greatness, and whatever's next from Tracii, it's being listened to in this household.
Awesome. I'll keep trying then.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Talk to you soon.
Paltrocast.